Hello there. I have an interesting poll about the last pandemic and how the government reacted to it. Basically, people are asked about the treatments, the government mandating of said treatments, and the liability that should or should not be handled by the manufacturers and so on. And, well, the results are interesting. So, the 5 questions are these. Do Americans trust government health agencies like the CDC and the FDA? More than a third of Americans said they have little or no trust in the FDA and CDC, versus 59% of whom have complete or at least some trust. So 21% said they had complete trust, 38% have some trust, 23% not too much trust, and 13% they said they have no trust at all. Considering that the FDA is like half of it is funded by the big pharma companies, they're supposed to be governing and basically holding to account. I don't understand how so many people have so much trust. I suppose these facts are simply not well known enough. This is, in my opinion, a negative finding. The second question, should the government be able to mandate the treatments, the jabs? A slight majority, 51%, sided with personal health choices. 40% favored mandates. Across all ages, less than half of respondents favored mandates. The most opposed, 55%, were 45 to 64-year-olds. Slightly more than half of parents with a child aged 17 or younger living at home chose personal choice over mandates. I think these numbers are not nearly high enough. The fact that 40% of people claim that the government should be allowed to mandate these things is horrific, in my opinion. But at least we have the majority. So the third question, what about experimental jabs that haven't been subjected to standard safety testing? Should the government be able to mandate those? An overwhelming 72% of respondents said no to government-mandated experimental jabs like the, COVID-19 ones, which the FDA authorized for emergency use to expedite deployment during the pandemic. People aged 65 and older were the most opposed, 77.6%. Notice that younger generations are more tolerant of the government mandating things, even experimental treatments, to be forced upon them, which is, in my opinion, a bad sign, but still, 72% of all respondents opposed this in my opinion, travesty. And we're going to have to remember this when asked later on about the government's response and how well it's rated. So the fourth question, should anyone harmed by a jab be able to sue the manufacturer, as is the case for almost all other products and services? A bit of a leading question in the end there, but it is factually true. Across all age groups, more than half respondents said that jab makers should be held legally liable for injuries caused by their products. Responses ranged from a high of 60.8%, 45 to 64-year-olds, to a low of 51%, 65 plus. Interesting. So the low was those actually older. Blacks were among the least in favor of holding the jab makers responsible with 41%, and Asians were the most in favor, 61.7%. Interesting. I'm not going to comment on the racial makeup, I'm not sure I'm allowed to on YouTube. So, 5. Looking back on it, how would you rate the government's overall handling of COVID-19? Overall, only 12.9% of respondents said the government handled the pandemic well. Another 39.2%, so basically 40%, said it did the best it could, which is a far, far better rating than I would ever give it. In my opinion, the facts do not support this conclusion, and this is a result of a massive censorship. On the flip side, 21.2% of respondents thought the government mishandled the pandemic, and 19.6% gave it a failing grade. I believe that is the truthful grade the government should have received, considering everything. The youngest respondents, 18 to 29-year-olds, gave the government the highest marks. 23.4% believed the government did well, and 33.5% said it did the best it could. 30 to 44-year-olds had the lowest opinion of the government's performance. 47.5% said the government mishandled or failed. Even the 30 to 44-year-olds, in my opinion, were far too charitable with the government, but it is alarming that the youngest generation is the most pro-government. The government knew it was lying about a lot with the jabs and the pandemic. It knew it. We have the research to prove it. I am unfortunately not at liberty to discuss what exactly went wrong, because this is YouTube, and the last time I tried very peripherally to touch upon the subject, I got a warning. So I shall not discuss it further. But personal opinion, this is not a good sign. If, of course, you believe the government is good, well, then I think you've seen too much censored content, which is not surprising at this point. So, it says here, John Zigbee Strategies, an independent market research firm, conducted an online national poll of 1,005 registered likely voters for the 2024 general election, with an overall margin of sampling error of 3.2 plus minus percentage points. Subgroup exhibits higher error margins. Secure invitations were sent to a random sample of our nationwide panel of approximately 15 million adults via email, text to web, and application programming interface or API. So this is not a large poll. It is entirely possible that the results would have been different if they had sampled a larger cohort. Survey participants were screened based on age, voter registration status, and likelihood to vote. Minor weights were applied to ensure that the sample accurately represented the population's age, education level, gender, political affiliation, race, and geographical region. I'm not sure how much this is representative, but still, it does give you a certain ballpark towards the public's response to the government and the jab makers. In my opinion, the massive censorship on the subject has yielded positive results for both the jab makers and the governments who were in the driver's seat the entire time. And in my opinion, even so, you can see that there is still a very strong resistance to the idea that the government should or could mandate experimental treatments. Despite that fact that the government did exactly that, most people gave the government a passing grade on its handling of the pandemic, which is obviously contradictory and makes no sense, unless, of course, most people didn't know that the jab was experimental when it was forced upon them. Also, I'd like to point out that it was forced on people to protect others, meaning to prevent you from spreading it. And there is quite a bit of research. In fact, they now admitted publicly that they knew that the jab did not, in fact, totally prevent the spread. If you remember Rachel Maddow, there's clips of her saying that we know that, the problem stops with each person who was jabbed. And now you can see clips of her saying that, well, actually, no, we knew that it wouldn't do so. So I do believe that there was a lot mishandled, and it's easy to see. However, for some reason, despite the public opposing the government-mandated experimental treatments, it seems to be very pro-government on average. Very strange. Now, as far as the FDA and the CDC, they still receive quite a bit of trust, right? 59% have complete or at least some trust. Like I said, RFK Jr. was the one who brought it to my attention, at least, and I believe to most of the public's attention that actually know of this, that these organizations are in fact being funded by the people they're supposed to monitor and adjudicate. And that is a travesty. It should not be allowed. Obviously, the government should be funding these organizations with zero coming from the groups that they're supposed to monitor. It makes no sense at all to create a regulatory body to regulate the people who pay the salaries for the regulatory body. It's literally useless. It's a rubber seal, a rubber stamp. And I think more people should be aware of it. Hopefully, this Trump administration will correct this travesty, because you shouldn't have to be a right-wing conspiracy theorist to realize the absurdity of it. Now, all in all, am I displeased by the results? Yeah, a bit. I do feel a bit pessimistic. It shows me the power and strength of censorship and propaganda. That being said, I am pleased to see that even with all of this, most people are not on the idea that experimental treatments should be forced on us. In my opinion, this is going to be a big issue in the coming decades. Essentially, especially mRNA technology seems to be progressing at a very rapid rate without perhaps the logical safeguards that should really be installed for such a process, and the public does not seem to be joyfully going along with such experimental treatments. Most people are more cautious, and the way that they sell that product is to force it through the government. So a wide majority, which we have with 72%, that opposes the forcing of these experimental treatments on the population is a very positive sign. I think that's the crux of the matter. So we can be optimistic about the public response to future problems that will inevitably arise. There have already been so many attempts to create a new scare and sort of excuse the next mandate. Honestly, it is, as I've been told, and I honestly don't remember where I heard it, but it stuck with me. The most profitable business possible is to mandate these jabs, because essentially the price is whatever you want it to be. You can have it as high as you want because the government pays and not the taxpayer, so you don't have to take into account the willingness of the individual to pay more or less, or to purchase, because you can mandate it. So the customers are literally every person on earth. The price is whatever you want it to be, and you even get government aid in the manufacturing and research funding. So it is literally the most profitable business venture humanly possible. It's no surprise that with such an incentive, you would see a push to have it repeated again and again. However, it has been catastrophic for the economy in general and for most people. Do remember it was the largest wealth transfer in history, from the working and middle class to the corporations. So absolutely oppose it by any means necessary. Obviously, legally, please don't do anything stupid. And I think that's enough for today. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.